Hi, good afternoon to everybody on the call today. Welcome to today's webinar, Co-Creating Startups with Hafnium. So I'm Kai-Hu from Accelerate, and today I will introduce Hafnium and the speakers for today. Hafnium is a private equity firm set up in Singapore, established in Singapore, and they focus in the chemical sector as well as some niche sectors in the high growth areas. So they have a venture builder arm called the Hafnium Venture Builder, which collaborates very closely with A-Star to identify and commercialize technologies for venture co-creation. So they have been working with A-Star for a couple of years now, and they have actually reached out to many RIs in A-Star, and that would include RIs like ICES, IMRI, CFB Biotrans, as well as Syntec. And actually last year they have set up a new venture together with us, and that is called Fermatics. And that was actually a new venture that is working with Biotrans to commercialize technologies from Biotrans to actually scale up the production of some of the bio ingredients. So it's been a very successful new venture, and I think they are looking forward to actually co-creating more new ventures with us. So next I will introduce the speakers for today. We have Francis Tan, who is the CEO and founder of Hafnium. So Francis comes from many years of experience in the chemical sector. He was prior to this, he was actually the regional director for Shell in the merger and acquisitions department. And he's also part of the global portfolio management team. So he's a very senior and very experienced guy. Then we also have John. John is actually based in the UK. He's very experienced in the private equity space, and he was actually previously the CFO of Pamoy, as well as a partner at EY London. And we also have Dr. Stefan. Dr. Stefan, prior to setting up Hafnium together with his other partners, was the VP and head of strategy for Lenses, and he was also the BU head for Bayer. He has a PhD in chemistry, and very interestingly, in the earlier years, he was also our ex-colleague in A-Star. So for today's talk, we'll start with Francis and John giving us an introduction on Hafnium and what they do at Hafnium, as well as their approach to venture building. And after they finish their talk, they will hand over the stage to Dr. Stefan, who will speak about the venture creation for Fermatics. So without further ado, I will hand the stage over to Francis and John.
Thank you, Kai-Hu, for that very warm introduction. A good afternoon to everybody and a warm welcome for everyone who has joined us. My name is Francis. I'm one of Hafnium's executive director. And the team of us are delighted to have a chance to share with you about what we do in Venture Builder. Perhaps we could have the slides on, if we could. Thank you. Yeah. So on Hafnium Venture Builder, we start off with a premise that IP and deep tech commercialization is difficult and very challenging. You need to get many things right in order for research and development. The scientists' painstaking hard work to see the light of day. To have it applied to the level that scientists, innovators, research institutes envision it to be. So it's not easy. And in Hafnium, we believe that in light of that challenge, there's an opportunity for us to enhance the success rate to bring IP from lab to market. This translates to a significant value creation opportunity that leads to better and more competitive outcome for research investment. An area actually that's not well covered by the current commercialization ecosystem. But in order to capture that opportunity, we need to bring to bear hands-on commercialization expertise, to bring it early, to validate markets, understand competition, and to validate business model. And this to be done in tandem with first-class technology development. In Hafnium, we have a vision. We envisage that we will be the commercialization engine dedicated to early stage specialty chemicals and material spin-offs in exchange for equity. We want to work with scientists, inventors, innovators, and business developers like yourselves to offer the best chance of your development turning into commercial success. In the process of doing that, we aim to unlock the value for IP and technology, to create sustainable value through a good understanding of its application, and to capture those values via developing business model that suits the IP and technology development you have created. In the following sections, I'll share with you what we do that we believe is distinctive, our core building blocks that would be enablers to success for scientists and research institutes, and the composition of the Hafnium team that gives us the conviction to make that claim. I'll then pass on to my colleague John, who will highlight our international reach, elaborate on our methodology and development model, and how we are working with the ccelerate team and the scientists and A staff. Finally, we will also then have our CEO of Fermatics, Dr. Stefan Bahnmueller, to share his experience on the first Accelerate Hafnium co-venture. We welcome you to key in your questions so that we have a more interactive and to engage in real time. If we can go to the slide on what we do. Yes. So unlike conventional venture capital or startup incubators, we appreciate that a successful spin-off requires more than seed and angel capital, more than mentoring and advice. It requires hands-on grit to get things done. So with that, Hafnium adopts a co-piloting approach, where Hafnium, together with the scientists, with the industrial development group business developer, work together to steer the development to success. What does that mean? Contrast that to driving a car, where you have somebody sitting beside you or passengers behind you. Contrast that to a bicycle, a front-back bicycle, where you've got somebody cycling in front, somebody cycling or may not be cycling behind. The way we envisage this is deep tech and commercialization is complex. It's like flying a plane. Many instrumentations, you have to adapt to ever-changing external environment, and a lot is at stake. Hence, the co-piloting approach is the way that we believe we need to go, and hence our tagline that we don't advise, we do. If we move on to the next slide, please. So our core building blocks for success are as follows. We adopt a sector focus. We believe that to effectively contribute to commercialization, you need to have expertise in the sector. We focus on specialty chemicals, advanced material, and ingredients. Linked to that, you need to have expertise in science. A big part of our team understands the science, understands the chemistry of the technology development that we're working on, and can participate together with the scientists, with the researchers in the development process. International reach is critically important. Many applications stand a greater chance of success with a global network of collaborators and partners. To that, you need to have industry relationship, knowing where, which part of industry that gives you the best touch points to launch and to commercialize those technology. John will later on talk a bit more about the composition of our group that allows us to do that. And last but not least, we within Hafnium have access to the right funding at the right stage to support a sustainable technological development. If we go on to the next slide, please. Yeah. So this slide illustrates how we work with scientists and with business developer. Right. Yep. Yeah. So I was just looking at the chat, but I think we'll tackle that question in terms of there's something around. Are we only doing on chemicals and not on biotech? No. We looked at specialty chemicals, advanced materials, and including active ingredients. which are part of the chemistry space. So in terms of what this slide seeks to illustrate, we want to highlight that within Hafnium, we offer to do the heavy lifting in developing the market, sourcing for supply and production, and securing industry commitment. This allows the scientists to collaborate amongst themselves, and more importantly, to focus on the technological development. They do not have to worry about areas which are important nonetheless, but can be a distraction on a day-to-day basis. Scientists, inventors, you have a team within the Hafnium Venture Builder who's working for you, with you, in developing the technology that you have started up. Finally and critically, I think we bring to bear key market and industrial feedback in real time that allows adjustments, amendments to be made in time before huge cost and commitments are undertaken. That's critically valuable, especially when you talk about the sequencing of activities that leads to commercialization. We parallel path things, which John would describe in greater detail. We go on to talk about our team, if we could, at the next slide. So we did highlight the importance of having a good mix of expertise. 1/3 of our team are PhDs and scientists who understands the work that scientists and inventors do. One group of our teams have operated, ran businesses at the highest level, and 1/3 of our team have done transactions in terms of investment and ventures. This combination of skills allows us to effectively undertake a full range of commercialization activity and be an extended part of the spin-off outfit. We believe that with this structure and format, it allows us to work effectively, building upon the Institute's scientific prowess, the setup we have in ccelerate, and together to advance science and commercialize innovative technology with a clear view to further economic growth and to improve times. If on top of our team, we have a group of advisors. These are immediate group of advisors that provides an active sounding board, critique the ideas, plans that we have, and also effectively challenge the plans that's been developed to ensure they're fit for market and provides the best risk management in terms of committing resources and time. Above the existing advisors, we have a broader network that can provide us with a rich international source of creativity. And with that, I think I'll pass on to John, who will elaborate further. John, over to you.
Thanks, Francis. Yes, Francis, mentioned our international reach. When we created Hafnium, one of the key aspects in our thinking was that to be successful, one of the important things was to not just to talk about our connections around the world, but actually to set the business up in such a way that that actually was embedded into the business from day one. So from the very beginning, we set it up with a dual center, very much Singapore and Europe. As you see, in Europe, we have 4 separate locations. We're in London, Cologne, Milan, Monaco. We have further outreach into Japan and the US, all within our team. And for us, that's really important because it's easy to talk about relationships with commercial partners, but actually when you're in position and you meet with them on a regular basis because they're next to you, it changes things fundamentally. And we really believe that because of the way we've set the business up, we can genuinely deliver unparalleled access to commercial partners. It also gives us tremendous insight into the technologies that are being developed in Europe, in Japan, in the US, and I think particularly in Europe. So when we are looking at the opportunities, for example, coming out of A-Star, we have immediate reference points to say, well, is this really a cutting edge technology? How advanced is this really? We can look around and see what other players are doing in the market. If we look at how we approach our focus, our starting point in this is actually what are the real global megatrends that are relevant to our business, our expertise, and how should that influence our thinking? So when we've looked at it, I think four of them really started to jump out at us. One was around the tremendous growth in Asia and urbanization taking place. The second one was around climate change, the energy structural shift that's going on and it's accelerating day by day at the moment, and on digital transformation. And we said, how do those relate to what we're looking at? How do we use those as a tool to ensure that we're on the winning route? We give the ventures we collaborate with the best opportunity of success. How do we pick the winners? So we looked at it and we said, well, that takes us down. When we're looking at things, we want to be looking around, is it an energy efficient solution? Is it in really advanced materials? There's also a, let's call it a bio-renewable, recyclable theme. So that then for us is the drivers to how we think about things. And as we've worked through this, partly based on our own experiences, partly based on the opportunities that we see, it's given us a real focus. So we look at, we look at coatings, we look at functional polymers, we look at eco solutions. Adhesives is a strong sector for us. Food, feed, active ingredients, cosmetics, all very important to us. Where we believe we can deliver most value to the ventures that we participate with. And the other, does that mean that's all we look at? Absolutely not. The way we would describe it is that's our focus, but we're looking for winning technologies. So if we identify a technology that may not fit into that focus, but we perceive to be a real winner, something that we can add value to, then we will look at that as well. I think what I would say is our key criteria is, number one, we have to believe we can add value. So I'm just checking the questions coming through.
John, I'm looking at the questions. I'll be answering the questions as we go on.
So if we look at how does all this translate into how we deliver on ventures, how we build a venture, it's a very the nature of the business, the nature of the technologies we look at means that it's a long-term program. When we're looking at spin-outs from A-Star, they are very early stage technologies. I mean, we may be sitting saying it's a very high TRL level within A-Star, but in terms of the work that needs to be done to commercialize that's still a long way to go. So we look at this, I think, really in two ways. One is, from Hafnium's perspective, this is not a short-term investment, but also it's not a short-term involvement on our part. So when we commit the resources of our team to a project, we know that it's going to be at least a 2-year commitment. It's not, it's not 6 months and then we sort of leave and hopefully go raise some money and bring in a new management team. That's not how we do it. We view it that over that 2 years, we as a team will be committed to that business. We will have individuals within our business focused on delivering around that business with others supporting it. But also during that time, we'll start to develop the management team to carry on with that business in the preceding years. But it's not something we believe can be done in 6 months. It's not something we believe should be done in 6 months. And we look at it as there's an initial what we would describe as typically 6 month block and then 2 years. Why 6 months? Really on that first 6 months, it's critical around not, just trying to establish what are the right commercial opportunities here. What is the business model going to be? Is there really the market we think there is? How good is the market? What we're looking for is we're looking for winners. We're looking for where are the technologies that are going to be a game changer? Where are the markets in which that technology could be a game changer? We see a lot of technology where we think, well, it's really good technology, but it's just better than the technology that's in existence. And quite often in this market, being just better isn't good enough. It's not a reason that you will be successful in the market. It's not a reason that customers will change to your product rather than their existing product, particularly where we look at some of the highly specialized areas, when we look at medical, when we look at aerospace, when we look at automotive, those sort of areas where a lot of the advanced materials are going into. It's a very long sales process, and for one of those manufacturers to change their plan to accommodate your product is a really big issue, and they're not going to do that for incremental gains. They're only going to do that for really material gains. So we spend a lot of while during that first 6 months addressing those sort of things, addressing what needs to be developed in the technology, sometimes refocusing the technology development. And at the end of that period, we get to what we would consider to be a go, no-go decision. So very clear, yes, we think there's a really attractive market there. We think the technology is deliverable. We push ahead. And then it's into really accelerating the growth of the business then. Typically, we anticipate to somewhere 18 months to 2 years, 2.5 years in, there'll be a significant fundraise takes place. But I think where we're very different is we're not looking at having to do a fundraise at 6 months, having to do a fundraise at 12 months, because actually our team is providing most of the resources that is required. And therefore it takes a lot of that pressure away and allows us to focus on developing the business, not creating false milestones to satisfy investors. So it's a very different approach. But at the end of the day, this is a 5 to 7 year, typically 5 to 7 year plan before the business will be, standalone and profitable. And I think probably one thing to add here is, and I'm sure it will come up in the questions around how do we focus on an exit? The reality is we are not super focused on an exit. We accept, with our partners at A-Star, an exit may be appropriate for them. It may be appropriate for us. It may not be appropriate for us. We don't start with a predefined view. And I think, again, that's really important, because otherwise we start deriving the business opportunity based on our objectives rather than the business's needs. If we look at our methodology, what's different about it? I think I mentioned before, we're not about incremental gains. We're looking at what can be game changers. The other aspect of this that is very important to us is it's about winning the race to market. We don't want to have the best technology, but we're third to market. We'd rather have really good technology and we're first to market, because that's how you establish your seat at the table. But what's really different in terms of how we think about this is we don't follow the traditional approach of the research is done, people think about what the potential markets might be, they then get some test product, they take it out to the market, they get market feedback, and they go back to the start again and refine the product. Our whole approach is actually to do all of this dynamically. It's not done sequentially, it's all done in parallel, because we actually look at how do we co-develop this with the commercial partners. It's absolutely fundamental in terms of how we think about it. It is, and we find it makes a real difference, because we get those insights early on that allow us to really tweak at the research end rather than trying to retrofit a pre-developed solution. We have 3 development models when we look at ventures, and part of this is around, it's what does the business need? What does any startup need? So I think particularly with someone like A-Star, we're often looking at very early stage technologies. We're often looking at scenarios where the scientists are not ready to leave the research institute. They may have aspirations down the line to lead a startup, but the technology is still so uncertain that they're not ready to jump out of the RI, and that's fine. We see three models. One, there isn't a team on day one. The scientist is going to stay with the RI. The second one is the scientists actually are going to lead the project. And the third one is a much more established spin out, where we're going to come in and deliver very precise, specific support for that business. Could be on the scaling up on manufacturing, could be on the commercialization. But if we look at what I've described for the typical A-Star scenario, we anticipate that part of that whole first 6 months is to work with the scientists to really establish, is there going to be a winner? Is this a technology that will be taken forward? And there we will provide all of the infrastructure, we'll drive the commercialization, we'll drive the manufacturing, and we'll deal with the financing. So we believe that gives a lot of flexibility to meet the opportunities that any individual technology may have. Just to touch briefly on our portfolio, it's growing very rapidly. I mean, we did our first deal with Fermatics in November 2019, so not so many months ago. Obviously, COVID has made things a bit challenging, but our view is we expect to be doing a deal probably every couple of months. We have in June we have announced a deal with some technology coming out of NTU, Calopsis Adhesives, a business focusing on the bioadhesive systems. We think there are great opportunities there around the medical cosmetics market. Last month, we have put together a joint venture, Lignext, with a Swiss feed company. He's done a lot of development on lignin and developing animal feed supplements from that. We're really working off the antimicrobial properties of that. And we see lots of opportunities of that in both Asia and in developing human food supplements, in developing other animal feed supplements, fish feed. So this is very early stage, but we're super optimistic on that, and we haven't announced it yet, but hopefully we will be doing any day soon. A new venture, again a joint venture with a Swiss company, looking at developing high value proteins coming off of plant-based sources. So again, we think this is going to be a very successful venture, and we think there's a strong role for A-Star to play in that one as well. So yeah, that's how we build our business. I mean, clearly we just check the questions at the moment and see if we can answer those.
I think John, you've answered that. I think for us, we work very closely with ISIS, with Simtech, CFB, as well as IMRI. And these are and of course within each institutes, there are multiple specialty and departments. I think we are very open to speak with scientists who have ideas, who may or may not fall outside of these areas of focus, and then collectively discuss what are the opportunities in that space.
I think there's a question here on do we operate on the same principle as early stage venture capital? I mean, hopefully, I think we've addressed that. I mean, fundamentally, no. Our approach is very much around how we commit the expertise within our team to really develop the venture, to provide the bridge for that, from what the scientists have developed, to provide the bridge to get that into a business that is then capable of attracting venture capital investment. So it's very much a bridge on that. Does the PE side of our business affect this? I don't think it affects it. It's I think the way I would describe it is the Hafnium Venture Builder is a very different business. We have certain crossover in terms of the private equity side of our business and the venture builder. They both operate in a similar sector, and therefore we get a lot of cross-fertilization in terms of our connections in the industry, with the industry, the developments going on in the industry, the trends in the industry. We see a lot of things from that perspective, but I don't think on a day-to-day basis there's any particular interconnection there. So there's a question: would we look at helping scientists? So, for example, helping scientists look at market demand around novel ingredients from bio-wastes. I mean, the answer is yes. That is what we do. So yes, I think where people have identified opportunities and develop some technology around it, we will very much help them evaluate that market, identify the best approaches to the market. And I think it's something where we're happy to have those discussions with the scientists at a very early stage, even when it's just an idea. It doesn't mean to say it's something we would get actively involved in if it's very early. But we will certainly start the dialogue and give people a roadmap to where they would need to get to make it appropriate for us to then start to get involved. I mean, I think the typical, or the way I would describe the balance for us on this is there's a point where you need to get the technology far enough forward to actually understand what the true commercial opportunities are going to be. That doesn't mean to say it has to be super high TRL level, but I think you need to be getting up through sort of TRL 3 before we can really have a kind of sensible engagement, because otherwise it's an idea we can talk about the market, we can help a lot in thinking, but beyond that there's probably not a lot we can add at that stage.
So there is a question by Xiao Hu on the mode of scientists staying with RI, an example to share. Yes, I think it's a nice segue, because I think the example that Dr. Bahnmueller is going to talk about, Fermatics, would actually address that. It's a live spin out, and perhaps it's timely. We pass over to Dr. Bahnmueller. Good. All right. Please keep the questions coming. Stefan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. And coming back to the point Francis just mentioned with regards to commercialization is always difficult. I agree on that, but we have the passion and we have the know-how to select interesting topics in order to bring them to the market with our know-how and with our network. And Fermatics is is the first one in the co-creating startups together with Accelerate and Hafnium, and I would like to share that with you. There was a question that why we go into biotech, or if we go into biotech. We don't go into biotech per se, but if the products that come out of that go into markets which we like to favor, then of course we are also highly interested in biotech ideas. Yeah, and Fermatics is one of them as well. So Fermatics, as mentioned, is a Singaporean biotech startup. We have discussed that last year and carved it out November 2019 from Biotrans, which is now SIFB from A-Star. And as mentioned, this is the co-venture supported by the co-venture between Accelerate and Hafnium. And why we thought this is an interesting venture to proceed together with is because we evaluated the technology, and the technology is, at least for our understanding, worldwide leading. The BIP that has been created, or BIP means background IP, that has been created covers quite a lot of potential applications. You can see here on the slide that we potentially cover 1,000 molecules of carotenoids, 750 molecules of apocarotenoids, and more than 70,000 terpenoids. So a huge amount of molecules, a big, let's say, library which we can tap on with that technology that we have licensed for Fermatics. Just to give you some examples, on the carotenoid side, the astaxanthin is a very interesting compound. It is responsible for the red color of some shrimps or fishes, but it has a significant UV protection. So as a replacement of the current UV creams, it's interesting. The picrocrocin from saffron is a food ingredient that has a very high value, and therefore it is extracted currently from saffron and makes it therefore quite expensive. And last but not least, the terpenoids are interesting. If you can see on the right bottom side, the taxol, the structure is quite complex, and we could access that by the biotechnology routes. That makes it highly interesting. Yeah. So what do we do? I mean, I said we are a biotech company. So biotech means we do fermentation processes and receive therefore highly interesting products. We have a robust E. coli strain that is capable of giving us access to high yields of carotenoids and apocarotenoids, and we just have to feed these engineered E. coli bacteria, which you see on the left-hand side, very cheap feedstocks like glucose or glycerol, and the broth, and as you can see here on the picture, is then fed by glucose, and the engineered E. coli produce molecules we want. It's comparable to the alcohol fermentation, for example, for beer. Just the yeast or the bacteria doesn't produce ethanol, they produce the complex molecules that we want. And therefore we get access to products that are very unique. So we get here high value ingredients which normally cannot be synthesized in a chemical way. As you can see that the complexity is too high in order to go through chemical routes. We are competitive, which is for a startup, of course, highly important, because our low-cost fermentation route is comparably cheap, is always a bad word, but I would say it, less expensive than extracting it out of plants. And we have with our products a significant value add because we're serving high margin industries. And that's why I said at the beginning, biotech, yes, but we would like to serve the industries where we think there is a high value created. Yeah. I give you now on the next slide examples of our products, which we have already, which we are currently developing. And you see directly on the first side, even for non-chemical experts, there is a high complexity of the structure. So on the left-hand side, you see viridiflorol, which is normally extracted out of essential oils from trees in Africa or Australia, I think. And this molecule is so complex that you can only extract it. And there are potentially quite many applications in the cosmetics and oral care industry. So we can synthesize this with a very, very high yield, nearly as high as a theory. And we are currently going for functional testing in order to serve cosmetics and oral care industries. Then lycopene and phytoene, you see directly at the beginning that the molecule looks nearly the same, but the complexity is high due to the amount of the double bonds, and that differentiates these two molecules. So as mentioned, impossible to synthesize that chemically. There are some ways, but they are very, very expensive. So lycopene is a food additive. It has a red color because it can be extracted out of red tomatoes, but it has an additional effect that it has a pro-health impact on the human body, and it is also known that it has an anti-cancer effect on the human body. Phytoene, it can be extracted from crystal tomatoes. It has an interesting effect on the UV blocking. It can inhibit melanin synthesis, and that reduces the skin darkening. So you get a skin whitening effect, which is, of course, for Asian ladies very interesting because compared to Europe, you want to have fair skin. And that's why we think this could be a highly interesting niche application for the huge market in Asia. And therefore, it goes into food additive and cosmetic applications. Last but not least, one of my favorite molecules, alpha-ionone. It is chemically synthesizable, but you get only a racemate, and we are able to synthesize with a high selectivity the R-type of the racemate. Why is that so important? Because the R-type is responsible for the raspberry-like odor, and when we evaluated the business case for Fermatics, and we talked to industry partners, they said, if you can produce alpha-ionone in a high yield, we buy immediately everything. Yeah? So that there is already a very high demand in the market for that kind of product that goes into flavor and fragrances, but also in food additive industries. These are our products. I would like to go over to showcase you how the contribution from the two sides, A-Star and Hafnium, takes place. So there are success key elements from both partners, because based on our expertise, we bring it into Fermatics, and we think that we can, or that both sides can really benefit the success of Fermatics. So let's start with A-Star on the left-hand side. Of course, A-Star is the agency that has the technological know-how. That's why this is always the technology backbone of any venture we will do, as well as for Fermatics. Yeah, the technology backbone could be IP, could be the know-how of that is preserved within A-Star. Maybe there are also old technologies that are kept within and nobody knows it. So technology backbone is very, very important in order to have here a competitive edge. Minimum or even more important are the skilled scientists. Yeah, and you have so many skilled scientists in A-Star that it's like a toolbox. You have to pick the best out of it and can create really a good setup. And that's what we have done with Fermatics. The skilled scientists are the key part of being successful in the market. And of course, the facility and the equipment is also very important. For example, if we need to have some equipment to downstream process our products, for sure any A-Star institute has something that is suitable. So in this case, we found something at ICES where we can downstream process our products. But also with regards to analytical equipment, everything is there in A-Star, which makes it quite comfortable to tap on what is there already. On the right-hand side, Hafnium, where we're coming from, of course, as previously mentioned from Francis and John, we are doing the management of the company. We have the strategic guidance here. We should know where we want to go with Fermatics. We believe that we do because we have a very high-level network in these industries I just introduced you to. So we have, let's put it that way, we think that we can shorten the time to market significantly by using our network and our contacts. That means we have industrial partners in hand. We always are in exchange with these guys, and therefore we can create a faster market access. And overall, we believe that this is a story that will lead Fermatics to a success. Now I would like to come to the special role of our A-Star scientists, because I think that is something that all of you are interested in. So I would like to highlight here what our scientists at Fermatics do and what they can help us with. Our scientists at Fermatics have a special role, as Fermatics is highly technology driven. We have here a background IP that is unique globally, and that's why technology is utmost important here. We have scientists that are very skilled and highly motivated. Motivated is for me personally very important, otherwise it's no fun to work together with. Our scientists have developed Fermatics core technology with A-Star, and that's why we really believe that we have here a competitive edge globally. Yeah? That has been, of course, developed before the carve out of Fermatics, discussed with the scientists and find out whether that is really something we would like to risk our money and our time. Of course, we trust our scientists to further develop our core competency and strengthen it by developing further new products. That comes without saying. But as well, our scientists have a kind of a comfortable position because you're still employed by A-Star, but you have still the opportunity to join Fermatics once the venture sets off. That means you can choose at a later stage where you still want to be a part of the exciting journey with Fermatics or not. Yeah? And that comes without saying, actually, that these scientists who join then Fermatics will also become shareholder of the company, yeah? Which increases or should increase then the motivation even more. I don't want to hold here a presentation without introducing you to the people behind it. Yeah. So I want to focus here on the scientists. You can see 5 A-star scientists who are part of our exciting venture. Simon, Sisian, and Qingning are the R&D people for the strain engineering of the E. coli. Christoph Ottenheim is new in the team. He is responsible for the production and the downstream processing. And Ben Smith is responsible for the functional testing of our product in order to bring them to the market. Yeah? I'm particularly happy that the inventors of the background IP are on board, Simon and Sisian, because IP is nice to have, but without the brains of the ones who have invented it, it is actually quite useless. So very happy that these both are on board, as well as Qingning, who is now responsible for the strain engineering of alpha ionone. You can see that there is really an interdisciplinary A-star expertise, and we have tried to put that under the umbrella of Fermatics in order to also increase the synergies. Yeah? Last but not least, I put a very difficult formula on the bottom, yeah, but to also highlight that not only facts are important by, for example, evaluating the IP or the technology. For me personally, it was highly important before starting up the venture that the so-called soft facts are there. And I talked to Simon and Sisian beforehand, and I found that these two are very motivated, skilled anyway, but very motivated. And in my experience, highly motivated people create an outstanding team spirit. And at the end of the day, if everybody is happy and likes to work for the company, then we have also a good overall performance of the company. Yeah? And that's why I think we have created here a really outstanding and unique team. And I thank you all for being part of the exciting journey with Fermatics. Last but not least, I would like to show you our partner. On the left-hand side, you see, of course, our shareholders is Hafnium and ccelerate. Below there, you see the A-star institutes, which we are working together with currently. Of course, the main institute is here CIFB, where all the scientists are currently coming from. But I also would like to mention here ICES, where we have really the great opportunity to utilize the equipment for the downstream processing over there. I know it was not easy, but we made it, and I'm particularly happy about it that we can start now using that equipment for our Fermatics venture. On the right-hand side, you see the companies from our network, Lubrizol and Givaudan as the big MNCs who have particular interest in the flavor and fragrance and cosmetic area. Then Frey and Lau as a German company, as a SME, Mittelstand company, also particular interested in flavor and fragrances. But we also focus on local companies, and here we have Senses International as flavor and fragrance company, and Estetica as a cosmetic company, who we would like to collaborate with, or we do already. And on the bottom, you see Olon, which is an Italian company who is doing the toll manufacturing. And we are in contact with them in order to produce our product in a high volume to access the markets in flavor and fragrances with a higher volume of product. Okay, I'm at the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. You can contact us whenever you want. Please have a visit at our website, and please like us on Facebook and LinkedIn. There is a nice page. Not too many listed up there, but it would be happy if you could like us there as well. Any further questions?
Hi, Stefan. We have one question for you.
Okay.
What is Fermatics' product launch timeline?
That's a very good question. The timeline is, we are currently still in the evaluation phase because we got an extension to do the COVID time. We try to get our alpha ionone as fast as possible into the market. The problem here is that we need samples, and that we need a higher volume. Now you can imagine if we have, let's say, a low titer, that means that we have to go in a high volume of 10,000 liter reactors, and we don't have that in-house in A-Star. So we will collaborate with Olon, the company I introduced, and will produce the products in that big fermentation scale, and then go to market by sampling the customers, and then also be able to directly sell the product. That's highly important because we know that there is a demand from the market for alpha ionone. The timeline will be approximately for sampling, for sure, end of the year we can do that, and then we expect that we have to decide on how to upscale. Yeah, that will be the next step. We really expect here a high demand from the market. Any further questions?
Yeah, but perhaps we could touch on a couple of themes around. I think there's one theme around the scientist's role, which I think cuts across both the core discussion as well as with Fermatics. And I think the way that, and John has illustrated via the different models, I think the key message there is that it is what Hafnium Venture Builder offers. It's options for scientists. An option to de-risk going into a spin-up if it is still at initial stage. An option for you to use Hafnium Venture Builder, but at the same time partake in the venture itself. And for that matter, if you would like to drive that spin-up yourself as a scientist, we can then partner as a commercial collaborator to drive the activities. And I think it is important that we want to put that across, because I think there's a huge element of risk with regards to any spin-off. And what we are trying to do is, through the scale that we have, de-risk it from a scientist's perspective. John, Stefan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think you put it pretty well, Francis. I mean, yeah, our view is we want to make this as successful as possible for the scientists, both in terms of the participation they get in this going forward, in terms of the financial side, but also in terms of the personal participation in it as a business. But for us, we're not wedded to any one particular answer. I think the set of circumstances will change from with each different scenario on what's going to drive that decision. And I would say part of our process is really focused around this initial kind of 6-month really deep dive on driving both the commercial and the scientific deliverability going forward. And I think being completely honest, I think our view would be, more often than not, it's unlikely until we get to that stage that things are going to become clearer. If I was a scientist, there may be some where it's very clear the absolute winning technology that there is, and spinning that business out and leading that business yourself from day one is a perfectly viable scenario. I think a lot of situations is less clear than that.
I mean, maybe one comment from my side on that. Actually, everything has been said, but of course you cannot exclude the risk completely. That is very clear. But I think with the pre-evaluation, and Fermatics as an example, with the pre-evaluation of the technology, we were already quite impressed and sure that we can start here something, which we did then, and still we have now the time to really adjust our business case. Within the 6 months, there were really quite a lot of changes because we thought that maybe another product could be quicker in the market, which was not the case. Then we changed the focus. We think we have now a good sense of how we can address the market. So there will be, that's a fluid system, yeah. We have a good gut feeling at the beginning. We have evaluated everything. The people are on board are great. So we think together we can achieve it. And after 6 months, we think we have really something to be successful here. But as said, it is never without a risk. And for the researchers, I think it's quite comfortable to join later stage where the risk has been maybe overseen a little bit more. Yeah.
On mute. Yeah, I think there's a question about how about the production in large scale, as you mentioned, 1,000 liters, will it be in Singapore or outside? Actually, I think thanks for that, Sri. I think this is a nice segue because I think one of the things that we talked about was the commercial and the business model evaluation that Hafnium Venture Builder undertake. We work closely with the IDG colleagues with ccelerate, but our prerogative is to define strategy for supply, strategy for production that best de-risk and actually most fit the level of activities across a development. To use an example of large scale, a lot of things has to happen before that decision it's actually undertaken. And what we do is look at alternate options, look at alternate partnership structures that would allow us the proof of concept and to basically enable the development to get to a point whereby you have the level of confidence to then commit to a scaling up activity. And to use a good example to illustrate, we were discussing with a startup. They have a technology and they're very keen to go into immediate production. Immediately they run into a fundraising situation. Whereas if you look at it the other way around and say, look, how do you build up sufficient scale in order for you that when you have the plan in place, you'll be able to immediately fill up your order pipeline? Are there enough order pipeline? Are there intermediate solutions that could be taken for pilot, for production, that will allow you the maximum chance of success and at the same time be first to market? So that is a kind of multi-layered, complex commercial consideration that within Hafnium Venture Builder we're well placed to put. And of course, that has to factor in the technological consideration. But if you start off with that at the first point and trying to prove that, that becomes quite a risky and major undertaking.
Maybe for time management, because it's getting to 4:36, so maybe we'll take the last one question on the chat box.
John?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, the question is around what's the typical co-creation equity sharing between Hafnium and the scientists. So I think two things there. I mean, it's not just, I guess what I would highlight is it's not just between Hafnium and the scientists, it's also between A-Star. A-Star is through ccelerate will be an equity partner as well in any startup. I think typically it really comes down to how involved the scientists are going to be. I mean, we always set a scenario that even, in whatever situation we would look at, that there will be a significant equity participation for the team, which would, typically we would have 10 to 20% of the equity carved out just for that. Partly that's for people who are going to be there on day one. Partly that's for people who may join, as we progress through. But if the scientists are playing a leading role from day one, then they may well have the majority. They could easily have the majority of the shareholding in that situation. So it's a pretty broad range. I appreciate that's not super helpful, because I'm sure you want me to be able to give you an exact number, but it really does genuinely depend on the situation. I think that, what I can say is that we would, we never do anything without having carved out some equity for the scientists. It's fundamental to how we do it. It's fundamental to how we work with A-Star on this. When we created our joint venture with Accelerate to develop spin-outs, it was a key part of that we're always, we always need to make sure, and both of us had to agree to this, that there would be a significant carve out of equity for the scientists.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add here that whatever equity piece that Accelerate owns to the new venture, you'll be treated as per our IP policy. So eventually, I think the scientists will also get a piece of the equity if the shares are sold in the end. So I think with that, thank you very much, Francis, John, and Dr. Stefan, for today's talk. I think it's very interesting for myself. I'm sure it's very interesting for all the participants in this webinar. And I think from this webinar, we can see that all at Hafnium are all very committed individuals, very experienced, and I think wanting our technology's commercialization to be successful. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll end this webinar. Thank you very much.